Hey friends, it's RSKT, and welcome back to another episode of the AE Modular Video Library, the series that takes a look at the wide range of modules available for the AE Modular system. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at an essential module, and that is the 2VCA over here. We'll be giving a general overview of it before diving into some demo patches towards the end. Before we begin, AE Modular is a small but ever-growing system, so if you find this video useful, be sure to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already, or consider supporting me on Patreon. The videos for this series can be found in a playlist on my channel and can be viewed in any order. Green thumbnails are used for official Tangible Waves modules, and pink thumbnails are used to cover third-party modules. With all of that said, let's take a look at 2VCA. Just like it says on the tin, the 2VCA has two voltage-controlled amplifiers built into it. If you have a modular synth system, or you're at least interested in one, chances are you already know what a VCA is, but just in case you don't, we're going to sort of show the inputs and outputs and show a few different use cases, some more conventional than others, and then, some sort of weirder examples towards the end before, diving into some demo patches. Now, there's not a whole lot to this module per se. We've basically just got two different inputs and two different CV inputs. We've got bus CV and bus control for MIDI. We've got two outputs for the first VCA and two outputs for the second, and then a series of mults so that you can multiply signals anywhere else from your rack. As well as that, we've also got two switches down here. So we've got audio and DC. I don't really find myself switching between these all that often, but according to the manual, it's really useful for getting rid of unwanted clicks or pops in sharp envelopes. So let's go over a very typical use case of a VCA. I'll try and make this very quick because I'm sure you already know basically what it is. I'm just going to hook up my mixer there. Let's take a square wave output, and we're going to plug this into the VCA. Now, sometimes people like to put the filter before a VCA, other times people put it afterwards. I don't think it really matters for this example. So I'm just going to go from the VCA, and we're going to go output to the filter, and let's go wasp filter down to our mixer. And we'll just open this up all the way, and you can't hear anything. And that is because we need something to control the opening and closing of this VCA. A good way to think about VCAs is it's pretty much just like a volume knob. Like, this is our volume knob, but we need something like a gate or a trigger to tell it to open. So what I'll do is we'll plug from the CV, we'll plug an envelope output into that. Now you'll find if I just open up this envelope a little bit and trigger it, wow, that's very high pitched. Let's just turn that down a bit. Cool, so that's opening and closing our VCA. Now obviously we want to trigger that with something. So what I'm going to do is, just in case I want one later, I'm just going to multiply the clock from my deluge down here. And let's take clock from the deluge and trigger a Euclid grid with that. Euclid grid does have a clock built in, but just in case I want to add drums later, just makes it useful for syncing things up. Let's take the A sequence here, and we'll plug that into the gate of our envelope. And let's hit play on the deluge. Now our envelope is open up a little bit too much, so let's just tighten it. Cool, so now this envelope is controlling our VCA. If we were to just remove a few steps here, maybe a couple more, and we'll just slow down our tempo a little bit so we can play around with the envelope. We can play with the attack. Turn it down even further. So yeah, I think you get the idea. We're using an envelope to control the VCA opening and closing. We could do the same thing by twisting this knob. And speaking of those knobs, the one way that I really like to use them is often when I've got a patch set up and I want to perform with it. I don't really like bringing things in and out using the mixer controls down here purely because I like to sort of figure out where I want the volume of like drums or a synth part or bass to be. Let's say it was set right there. And then I like to bring them in and out with the VCA. So if we hit play, we can hear that now that's playing, but I know that as soon as I turn this up all the way, it's going to be set at the volume that I've predetermined earlier on. So just keep that in mind. That can be really, really useful when you're performing with your tracks. Hey, just jumping in for the future here because I completely forgot to mention one thing about VCAs that is really useful to know when working with modular synths. We need to quickly talk about sidechaining. There are a few different ways of sidechaining, but this is something that you can set up with a VCA in order to achieve it. I'm just going to take a simple square wave. We'll probably, actually, yeah, we'll whack it into a wasp filter first, just to reduce some of those harsh frequencies. Plug it into the input of a VCA, and we'll take the VCA out and hook it up to our mixer. Now, of course, at the moment, we're not really hearing anything. That's because nothing's triggering our VCA. But what we want to set up first is a kick. Now, I've got a kick down here. It's got its own little envelope built in. So we're just going to trigger that with Euclid grid down here. We'll just make it 4 very basic steps. Let's just clock that. Cool. And if we plug this in down here, we should be able to hear it also. Cool. So we can hear that we've got a kick drum happening. Then what we're going to do is take the output of that kick drum and we're going to plug it into an attenuator down here. Let's leave it up all the way. Now, on our attenuator, we've got a couple of different outputs. We've got a normal output or an inverted output. So what we're going to do is take that inverted output, and I'll just use a more reliable cable. Sorry, my blue cables are a bit dodgy for some reason. We'll plug this into the CV control. So we can hear that's without it. And we are getting some decay with it. Now, unfortunately, the kick drum on this is rather short. It doesn't really sort of provide like a good enough envelope to give you more control. So what we'll do is we'll take that exact same kick trigger from our Euclid grid, and let's just trigger a second envelope with it. So instead of taking that into the attenuator, we'll take the output of envelope 2, make sure it's on trigger and set to fast, turn down the decay. And we can see that this envelope's triggering in time with our VCA. So now if we turn up our bass, that's pretty neat. It's working, and it's working pretty well. So obviously having one VCA for this does wind up being a little bit problematic, because not only do you need an envelope to trigger your VCA for sidechaining, but it frees up only one more VCA to use for like sculpting your sound with an actual envelope. So in reality, you'd probably want to set up your sculpted sound with the envelope just like you would like with a normal subtractive synthesizer. And then you want to feed that signal into another VCA and sidechain it against your kick. I hope that that makes sense. It took me a little bit to understand that when I first got into using modular synths, but yeah. It's just a really good way of getting a good pumping effect. Sometimes it can be really helpful to feed nearly everything in your track into the B mix section on your mixer, and then feed that into a VCA to be sidechained against your kick. Just food for thought. It can really help improve your mixes. Anyways, enough of that. Let's go back to the video. So now that we've looked at a more conventional way of using VCAs, let's look at some kind of unconventional ways. I've seen these pop up in a lot of cool YouTube channels over the years. And yeah, there's also a bunch of really good ideas on the manual page for this on the AE Modular forum or Wiki website, sorry. So at the moment, we've got a square wave going into this. Maybe we'll change it to a sine wave. And rather than patching in like an envelope or an LFO, speaking of, actually, I might as well just show you, you can technically plug anything into this. If I were to take this square wave LFO, we can hear that our LFO is just opening it and closing it, just like an envelope. Which is pretty cool. But right now we've got a sine wave going in there. Let's now just take another audio source, like maybe a sawtooth wave from the 2OSC drive over here. And we'll also plug that into the CV. Now, if this sounds at all familiar to you, it's because this is AM synthesis, and that's a part of the Castle synth down here, and I use it an awful lot. Plug this into low to get a bit of drive in there. So that's pretty neat. If we take that output and plug it into a delay, for example, it would probably sound even better. Let's maybe use a square wave. So yeah, I mean, that's really awesome. And of course, we could get something like a triangle wave LFO and plug that into the CV to get that happening for us automatically. These are really, really cool, fantastic sounds that can add a lot of effects and variety to your tracks as you're patching. Something else that we could try is clocking a RBSS down here, using our deluge, just in case we want to use it with some drums. Let's take the output of that and we'll plug it into an attenuator. Let's take that attenuated signal and hook it up to the analog input of the EuroPi down here, which is running a quantizer. And we'll just clock that quantizer with the deluge as well. Cool, so I don't really know what this is going to sound like. I'm kind of just experimenting here, but let's take that pitched information and we'll plug it into the CV control up here. Let's turn off the delay for now. Interesting. Maybe we could take that same output and plug it into the frequency of a 555. That's really neat because that's a sound I've not made with this system before. We could even take maybe another sawtooth wave and plug it into the exponential input of the 555. Let's try linear as well. And we'll switch it to a square wave. So already we're getting some new and interesting sounds with our VCA. Now what we might want to do is we'll take that sound and hook it up to another VCA, for example. And then we can plug that into our filter and trigger that second VCA with the envelope that we set up earlier. That way we'll have a bit more of a rhythm going on. Let's have a listen to what that sounds like. Then we could go ahead and create a drum patch on the deluge. And one thing I have forgotten to do is just set up a reset with the clock of the deluge so that everything lines up nice and neatly. Cool, and now we can sidechain that track with the deluge. Let's just plug in an LFO again. And there we go. We've already got something really interesting and unique that I haven't really heard on many other synthesizers before. Now let's just remove everything from that second envelope for now, and we'll just go back to the way that we had things. Yep, something like that should work. So something else that is, sorry, I'll just send that down. Something else that is kind of interesting about VCAs is that you can use them to combine signals, much like we're doing here, but let's combine it with something a little different. So I'm going to take one of my LFOs down here and put it into the input of our second VCA. And in the CV input, we'll add this square wave down here. Now we could use this to maybe trigger a clock source or something, just to sort of get like more of a audio feel for how it sounds. We'll just plug this into the CV influence of our filter. I'll just turn down the delay. Turn this up a little more. pretty neat. Let's maybe just try switching these around a little bit. So we can hear that as our second LFO opens up, we hear the first LFO. I love sounds like this. They're really cool and just endless fun and evolving. I'm not quite sure how this would work, but let's just take the output of a rimshot module over here, which is one of the drum modules from Wonky Stuff. And we'll take that same output of our second VCA and see if we can trigger it. That's cool. This now sounds like some real dystopian sort of like grimy sort of dance floor music. So yeah, I mean, I think it goes without saying, like everybody else says, you can never have enough VCAs because, yeah, you can use them to combine signals, to open and evolve signals with like envelopes and whatnot, and kind of like attenuate signals as well. It's pretty much like acting as an attenuator down here. I don't really think that there's too much left for me to say about this module other than the fact that I wish I had more of them in my rack. I definitely got a sort of solution coming up in mind, but my order hasn't arrived yet, so we'll just have to wait and see. In the meantime, I hope that you like the demo projects that are about to play for you. Hit the like if you like, and if you don't, tell me why. Please subscribe. Check me out on Patreon, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.